Hey everyone, welcome to Plants and Politics. So, Trump's approval rating has hit an all-time low, and this is, of course, in the wake of the terrorist attack he incited at the U.S. Capitol last week. Pew Research reported that Trump's job approval rating is now 29%. That's only 4% higher than George W. Bush's approval rating in 2008, when it was at its bottom. So Trump's approval rating has dropped 9% since August of last year, and this is the absolute lowest of his entire presidency. His last lowest rating was, I believe, following that ridiculous passage of the Trump tax scam when Republicans had that huge giveaway to the wealthiest people in the country, while simultaneously ballooning the debt and deficit that apparently they didn't give a damn about at that time, but now they're all about that again. So here are more details about this recent polling. According to Pew's surveys conducted in August, and then again this week, Trump's approval rating among Republicans alone has dropped by 17%. In August, 77% of Republicans said they liked Trump and what he was doing. Now that number has fallen to 60%. And over the past 2 months, the number of Trump supporters, not every respondent, not everybody who they spoke with, just Trump supporters over the past 2 months were asked if they would describe Trump's conduct as poor. That number has doubled. So 10% of Trump supporters 2 months ago said that they found his behavior to be poor. Now that's 20%. The Pew poll also showed that across all of the political spectrum, so Democrats, independents, Republicans, the number of Americans who rate Trump's post-election conduct as fair or poor has also spiked. It was 68% in November. Now it's at 76%. And nearly all of the people who responded to that, almost all of them were in the poor category. So not good. Also, 52% of Pew respondents say that Trump bears a lot of responsibility for the violence at the Capitol. Only 24% say he is not at all responsible, which I find disturbing that it's still 24%, but at least we're making headway. And approximately 75% of those surveyed say that Trump is at least partially responsible for what took place. And when asked if they want Trump to continue to be a major political figure in the future, 68% of all respondents across the entire political spectrum said no, absolutely not. So that includes Republicans in that 68%. Here's the real key figure. When broken down by party, only 57% of Republicans and voters who lean Republican say yes to that question. So even though it's still a majority of Republican voters, it's no longer an overwhelming majority. It's a very slim majority. This really highlights Republican divisions. I mean, it's hard to see based on these numbers how they win national elections in the future unless they can come to some sort of agreement on the direction of the party. Because there's at least 3 distinct groups of lawmakers who are all pulling in different directions right now. You've got the QAnon loons who are all about guns and Trump and little else. Then you have the populist right that kind of dips their toes in the Q puddle every once in a while to try to win over those Trump loyalists. This is like the Josh Hawleys of the world. And then there's the old guard, the never Trump establishment type Republicans. They loathe the fact that Trump says the quiet parts out loud, right? They're not that much different than him and the policies that he enacted, but they don't like that he outed them for their racism and their hypocrisy over their debt hawkishness and their love of corporate donors, including the ones in the military industrial complex. The old school Republican voters, however, I think are a little bit different than the old school Republicans still in Congress. They tend to agree with that debt and deficit rhetoric, but they want to get rid of corruption, but they don't seem to recognize it in people like McConnell and others, or if they do, they're willing to overlook it. I don't know. It's tough to say, but they seem to be a bit different than those in Congress. And they can't stand the fact that the party appears to now be under the control of these conspiracy nuts. I mean, these are people who believe, the Marjorie Taylor Greens, the Lauren Boeberts of the world, they truly believe that a letter of the alphabet has evidence proving that Democrats rape and eat babies to keep their youthful appearance. I'm not making that up. That is something they believe. And here's the deal. Last week, there were polls taken, but they were immediately following this attempted insurrection at the Capitol. Trump's numbers then were still pretty high, especially among Republicans. And people on the left were just freaking out. They were saying, Jesus, is there nothing that he can do to weaken his support? Are these people insane? Do they have literally no principles left? But that was before videos leaked out. Since then, on social media and elsewhere, you see videos that were taken from inside the Capitol of the true mayhem, the true violence that took place. Because what you could see from the outside, aside from those breaking windows and stuff, it looked relatively calm. And the first videos that were released, the first photos that were released were of people like mulling about in the Capitol, kind of standing on the Capitol floor or standing even in the Senate chambers or the House chambers. But you didn't see people being violent. The videos taken from inside when things got really bad, when the cops were trying to get people out, you see cops being physically assaulted, being hit with batons and sticks and poles, fire extinguisher fluid. You see these rabid Trump supporters punching in the glass on the doors with their fists, getting in officers' faces and screaming. You see hordes of people violently pushing against officers who were trying to move them out of the building. And now in one widely shared video, you see Trump's terrorists spraying the officers with bear spray, using their own shields and batons against them, crushing one officer in a doorway where he's seen screaming in pain. Thankfully he's okay, but he was injured in that violent attack. We now know you see people walking around in pro-Nazi clothing, carrying the Confederate flag, the flag of literal traitors to the United States, the flag of the people who fought to maintain slavery and killed soldiers who carried the Stars and Stripes flag that we know today. So I think it took a little while. I think the misinformation was out there. You had the Laura Ingrams and the, Human Thumb, what's his name, Hannity, and all the other alt-right, white supremacist, Trump-loving disinformation filth on Fox and Newsmax and elsewhere, pushing this propaganda that it was Black Lives Matter, it was Antifa. People are now seeing the truth for themselves. They're now seeing what Trump wrought. So yeah, it's making a difference. The people who held their nose and voted for him in November, and then they were uncomfortable and unhappy with him after the election, and when he wouldn't let it go and he wouldn't just step up, take his loss and move on and act like an adult. And then they saw the results of that, and it was the final straw, and they're just done with it. They're just exhausted by it, as all the rest of us have been. almost since the beginning, and they just want it over with, and they don't want him bringing the country down or their party, because they see he's a loser now. He lost the presidency, he lost the House, now he even lost the Senate for the Republicans in less than 4 years. He's lost it all for them. So they no longer see him as having that magic. And they see that, or they believe at least, that if they can get him out, if they can shut him up, Democrats will go back to sleep, stop paying attention, and stop voting in the numbers that we just did in November. I hope they're wrong, because we can't let our foot off the pedal at this point, and we can't ever take our eyes off the ball again. But yeah, people are done with him. So pretty pathetic. He's the only president to leave office and have his numbers decrease, have his popularity go down, to my knowledge. That is just pathetic. He is a loser in every single way. Bye-bye, one-term Trump. All right, guys, as always, like, share, subscribe. Thanks for watching and listening. Talk with you soon. Take care.